Surely the measure of any society is reflected in the degree to which it is willing to help the most vulnerable and create the kind of supports that will truly make a difference in their lives. For these British Columbians, we want to be able to provide the help they need to be happy, healthy, productive, and as independent as possible in their lives. After all, that's what our social safety net is there for. In reaffirming BC's AAA credit rating, Moody's observed that, quote, the province has presented a credible plan of consistent balanced budgets with little risk that the debt burden will exceed current forecasts, end quote. Down the street at Standard & Poor's, the examiners confirmed our AAA grade and in support cited, quote, the province's very strong financial management, exceptional liquidity, and very strong and wealthy economy.
You said BC remains the only province without poverty reduction plan. What does it mean?
Yeah, it means that we have a very serious problem with poverty. We have 1 in 5 children growing up in low-income families, and we know that this has long-term consequences. But we're not, our government is not doing much about that. Other provinces have poverty reduction plans that are integrated. So different ministries work together in order to reduce poverty. That's the specific goal, and not in order to help a particular group of people, say the people with disabilities or the single parents. You know, it's something that's integrated across all groups and ministries, and that's very important. And they're making progress. And BC is the last province in Canada. It's the only one that doesn't have that. The government has not prioritized poverty reduction. They keep telling us that if the economy is strong, then that's the poverty reduction plan. There is no need to look into it any further besides trying to grow the economy. But we know that's not true because the economy has been growing, and yet the number of people who need to go to a food bank in order to feed themselves is also growing. So it's not enough to just grow the economy, and the government is continuing to do nothing about it in this budget. And I think the important part here, why it's important to remember we're the only province, is that the government spends a lot of time bragging about how we're the only province with AAA credit rating. We're the province with the highest economic growth. And at the same time, we're the province that is ignoring the most vulnerable people. So I think that is also should be a measure of success. And it's good to lead Canada in credit rating, but we also should lead Canada in how we treat the most marginalized British Columbians.
The Economic Forecast Council met again at the end of November, and I'm again obliged to members of the Council who traveled here from various parts of BC and Canada, and to members of this Assembly from both the opposition and the government benches who took time to be in attendance.
So every year in the fall, there is a budget consultation, a public consultation process where a committee of MLAs from both parties are go around the province and hear from different British Columbians about their priorities. And they develop recommendations for the budget, and these recommendations are unanimously voted on by a bipartisan MLA committee, basically. And for the last 3 years, the committee has recommended a poverty reduction plan. It has recommended investment in social housing. It has recommended funding for the implementation of an affordable childcare plan. And yet, the provincial government has just ignored those recommendations completely, and in this budget continue to ignore them, even though they're coming up again and again, and it's clearly what British Columbians want and need, and the consultation committee agrees. So I'm not sure what is the point of having public consultations if the government is going to be ignoring the outcomes over and over again.
The dividends resulting from prudent fiscal management already reveal themselves in the fiscal plan before you today. $1.6 billion in new incremental spending over the 3 years, plus annual increases of 3% for healthcare funding, just under $500 million of which is made possible because of reduced interest payments on our reduced operating debt.
MSP premiums are going up again in 2017.
Yeah, MSP is another one of those where the government is trying to seem like they're doing something about it and that they're helping, but really it's not making much of a difference. What's happening is they're restructuring premiums so that children don't have to pay premiums, but adults will have to pay a higher premium. So as a result, a two-parent family with children will pay exactly the same as before. So it's hardly a way to exempt children. The only people who are going to save are actually single parents. But most of the single parents already were receiving premium assistance because most of them are quite low income. So there's very few single parents that will benefit from this. It's an unfair tax. So I think it's the government's feeling some pressure, but they're not doing enough to actually deal with the fact that if you make $45,000, you pay the same as someone who makes $45 million, essentially.
In fact, Madam Speaker, we all use our social safety net at one time or another, and that is particularly true when it comes to the healthcare system. British Columbia is recognized as a Canadian leader in health and wellness. The Conference Board of Canada's report on health ranks BC as third in the world for health performance, behind only Switzerland and Sweden, and it is ranked the #1 province in Canada. The high ranking reflects the priority government places on health and quality of life in BC, successes achieved while maintaining amongst the lowest per capita health care spending in the country. But I think it's also a reflection of a growing awareness on the part of British Columbians themselves that by far the biggest determinant of health outcomes are the decisions we make about our own lifestyles. Healthy diets, staying active. Budget 2016 continues to add more dollars to healthcare with $3.2 billion of additional funding overall for the Ministry of Health in the next 3 years compared to its 2015-16 budget. And for those facing the scourge of mental illness, this budget adds to the $1.4 billion already being spent on mental health treatment and supports. In addition, we've allocated $101 million to construct a 105-bed mental health facility in Coquitlam to help patients who are severely addicted and mentally ill. Madam Speaker, British Columbians enjoy world-class health care, but this care comes at a cost. In fact, total spending on health across all ministries is already forecast to be nearly $20 billion.
And you mentioned that BC is the only province in Canada that pays MST. Others just get it as a general tax.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing that gets me. The government keeps saying that we need to pay MSP premiums because we need to be able to provide health care. And yet all the other provinces in Canada manage to provide public health care without charging this unfair tax. They roll it in with income taxes or other business taxes. It just comes out of general revenue. And in fact, most of the spending on healthcare in BC too comes from general revenue. MSP only funds a small portion. So I really don't see a reason why we need this tax. It's unfair. Let's just roll it in with income tax and be done with it.
I know that some people have advocated eliminating separate MSP premiums altogether, but burying MSP into instruments of general taxation doesn't make them go away. It might hide them and may create for some the illusion that healthcare is free, which of course it certainly is not. By making children free and expanding premium assistance, an additional 335,000 people will see their premiums reduced, including 70,000 single-parent families. An additional 45,000 British Columbians will no longer pay MSP premiums at all. All told, Madam Speaker, these changes will mean nearly 2 million British Columbians, or more than 40% of the population, won't pay MSP premiums, an additional 335,000 British Columbians will be eligible for reduced premiums. And MSP premiums fund only a small part of that investment, and those premiums should be distributed fairly, equitably, in a way that makes sense. That's why starting January the 1st of 2017, we will be changing MSP premiums and enhancing premium assistance to improve fairness and help BC families with the cost of living. To begin with, all children will be exempted from MSP premiums, and the monthly rate for each household will be based only on the number of adults. An adult couple will pay twice the single adult rate. This will be of particular advantage for single-parent families who often have to work much harder and do more with less. Under these changes, a household with one parent and two children will be charged the single adult rate rather than the three-person rate as they are today. At a minimum, this family will save $864 per year, and depending on the income for the household, could save up to $1,224 per year. This three-year fiscal plan, drawing on our fiscal strength, projects total capital spending in the amount of $20.6 billion, of which $12 billion is taxpayer supported, and will ensure that record levels of investment in health, education, skills training facilities, transportation, and community safety infrastructure are made. $2.5 billion in infrastructure spending for post-secondary education, skills and trades training, for projects like Emily Carr University Art and Design Campus redevelopment, University of BC Life Sciences Teaching Laboratories redevelopment, Selkirk College in Nelson, the trades facility renovation there. Capital budget includes $3.1 billion in transportation investments, including Highway 1, the Admirals Road Mackenzie Avenue interchange in Saanich, Highway 1 widening and 216th Street interchange in Langley, reconstruction of the Fort Nelson River Bridge, Fort Nelson, and many others. It is a record level of capital investment in British Columbia.
There is some infrastructure increase. Most of the new infrastructure money is going towards the controversial Site C project, which is going to be quite expensive. There's also, as we know, other expensive projects in Metro Vancouver, replacing the Massey Tunnel with a big bridge. It's going to be quite expensive. It's not clear that it's necessary. But there's very little funding for transit. There's a little funding for BC Transit, but there's nothing specific for Metro Vancouver, where we know that there's a lot of need in Surrey and in Vancouver proper and elsewhere for expanded transit, because it's very connected to the housing affordability. When people can't afford to live in the city, we want to make it possible for them to commute, and that's not currently the case. So it's a huge problem. I'm hoping that the federal government, again, provide some support and investment for transit. This is one of the items they expressed interest during the campaign. So I'm sure that if the federal government came up with funding, the province would participate in some way. But it's important that we need to actually invest a lot provincially, not just wait for the federal government.
Also making sure, Madam Speaker, that our social safety net is there for other vulnerable British Columbians. That's why Budget 2016 provides an extra $250 million over the next 3 years to the Ministry of Social Development and Social Innovation for individuals and families in need. Addressing caseload pressures for temporary income assistance, disability assistance, and related supplementary benefits.
Social assistance and disability benefits have not changed at all for 9 years, even though the price of food has gone up by 23% and the price of rent has gone up by 12%, and prices of everything, all the essentials of basic living are going up. But people on social assistance and on disability have not gotten any increase. And now the government is increasing the benefit for those on disability by $77 a month, which is really small. They're going to be getting $983 a month, all told, which, you don't have to be an economist to calculate that this isn't enough to live in BC, not let alone in Vancouver and Metro Vancouver area, which is so expensive. So the disability benefits don't cover the cost of living here. They don't even cover the changes in inflation between the last time they increased it, and 2016. So I'm appalled by how little support there is for people with disabilities, considering that we have a surplus. So it's not like we don't have any money. The government can be spending a lot more and can be helping these people to actually be able to afford life instead of having to rely on charity.
An additional $36 million over 3 years is being provided to Community Living BC to support services for individuals with developmental disabilities and their families, and to address continued caseload growth and demand for services. There is, Madam Speaker, a measure of independence in daily life that many of us take for granted. To support the goals established in Accessibility 2024, this government's plan to make BC the most progressive province in Canada for people with disabilities, Budget 2016 provides $170 million over 3 years to increase income assistance rates for persons with disabilities. The increase in rates will take effect September 1, 2016. In addition to being challenged by rates that haven't changed in a number of years, depending on where you live, you may or may not receive assistance for a basic need like transportation costs. Some get a $52 bus pass, others get a transportation subsidy. Almost half of those people on disability assistance, it's about 47,000 people, get nothing. We think that's unfair. And we think all British Columbians, no matter where they live, deserve to have their need to move about taken into account. And that's particularly true for those with disabilities. Disability assistance is there to promote greater independence for people with disabilities, and transportation is fundamental to that independence. Rather than providing a transportation subsidy that only benefits some, effective September 1, irrespective of where they live, those on disability assistance will be receiving an increase up to $77 per month and the freedom to make their own choice about how to meet their own unique transportation needs.
So you're right, the $77 is actually less for many people. About half of the people on disability assistance were getting a transportation subsidy, anywhere between $52 and $66. And so they're going to be losing that subsidy, and this is going to be replaced with the $77. So actually for a lot of people, it's only $25 more than they got.
British Columbians are seeking explanations and solutions for a sharp rise in the price of homes in some areas of the province, particularly the Lower Mainland. And the truth is that despite what many people seem to think, the causes of rising property values are complex and really can't be attributed to any single factor. One of the ways we can better understand what's actually driving property prices in the province is to collect additional data on purchasers. The government stopped collecting data that specifically identified foreign purchasers in 1998. We believe there is a legitimate need to resume that process again. Therefore, beginning this summer, individuals who purchase property will need to disclose if they are citizens or permanent residents of Canada, and if they are not either a citizen or permanent resident of Canada, their citizenship and country of residence. Let me be clear, however. Our laws allow non-residents to own property, and our government continues to welcome, indeed encourages, those who choose to come to our province to invest, create new jobs, and hopefully to make their lives here and contribute to the social and economic fabric of our communities. We are proud of the diversity in our communities. That diversity makes us stronger.
They are doing one good thing, which is that they're going to start collecting information on the citizenship of home buyers. So we're going to know if foreign money is driving the market in a year or so. But this isn't a housing affordability measure yet. It's a data collection measure. So it's good, but it's not enough.
We can't simply focus on measures to help more people enter the market without also striving to increase the available supply of housing to meet the new demand. That will change effective tomorrow, when the purchase of a qualifying newly constructed home valued at up to $750,000 will become totally exempt from the property transfer tax.
But I was disappointed to see how little there was in this budget, and it was all focused on first-time home or on home buyers. So the biggest announcement, probably around housing, is that if you are going to be buying a newly constructed home, you get a tax break on your property transfer tax. So a person who can afford to buy a newly constructed home at about $750,000 will save about $13,000. That's the tax break. And we will pay for this by taxing people who are buying luxury homes a little bit more. So homes valued over $2 million will pay a higher property transfer tax. So when you resell them, you pay a higher tax. And that's good, but it's very small and it will have no effect on housing affordability in any meaningful way.
While we work to help more British Columbians work towards owning a home, we mustn't overlook the many low-income and vulnerable British Columbians for whom home ownership will remain a dream. Budget 2016 includes new taxpayer-supported infrastructure spending of $355 million by the BC Housing Management Commission over the next 5 years. The new program will increase the supply of housing across the province through the construction and renovation of more than 2,000 units of affordable housing for people with low to moderate incomes.
There is no help for renters. The only thing that the government announced is an investment in 2,000 affordable housing units, and they wouldn't say what affordable means, which is a bit of a concern for me, but 2,000 affordable housing units over 5 years. So that's very small in the grand scheme of things when you consider how many people are on the wait list for social housing in BC. In Metro Vancouver alone, there's more than 4,000 people on the wait list. So building 2,000 units is better than nothing, but it's really not going to solve the entire problem. And I think the government could have done a lot more. We could have seen tax on vacant homes, some taxes around speculation, to curb speculation in real estate. We could have seen help for renters in terms of the rental assistance subsidies, which have not been increased for years as well and are not reaching everyone who needs help. So I think these are important steps.
And we know that with the exception of the love and care they receive from their parents and families, the greatest determinant of their success, including owning their own home one day, is the access they have to post-secondary training. Back in 2013, we announced the BC Training and Education Savings Program, which provides a one-time $1,200 grant to the registered education savings plans of eligible BC children born on January the 1st, 2007 or later. thousands of families have already taken advantage by establishing an RESP and registering for this program that helps parents plan and save early for their child's education after high school so that they can get the training education they need to succeed. This year, we will be spending $39 million to extend the program to eligible children born on or after January the 1st, 2006, so that an additional 40,000 plus children are better positioned to make their dreams a reality.
There are some extra money coming in from education, but it's not enough. It's basically only enough to fund the increased pressures for salaries from the government's own bargaining rounds last time. And it is concerning because we had a strike, like a teacher's strike 2 years ago, when we found out that our class sizes are large and there's a lot of people with a lot of children with special needs who are not getting supported because our schools are under-resourced. And that's what the strike was about. And yet, this continues to be a problem. Recently released data from the Ministry of Education shows that there are more classes with more than 30 students than ever before. And there are more classes with a large number of special needs students inside. So we're not solving the problem, and the government's not putting any more money into this to help those under-resourced schools. So we can expect, unfortunately, to see more and more problems with that under-resourcing.
Crowded classrooms. More crowded,
crowded classrooms and kids who are not getting support. That is a huge problem. Children need extra supports in order to learn, and they're not getting them. And what happens is it's huge problem with income inequality, because if their parents can afford to buy the extra tutoring, to buy the counseling in a privately, then their child will do well. And if they can't afford it, then their child just, is compromised. They are not able to reach their full potential, and that is a tragedy.
Is this a lack of political will rather than economic feasibility?
Oh, absolutely, it's lack of political will. I mean, you read that budget speech, you can see the minister is very proud of how well we're doing economically. And while it's true that our economic growth rates are not spectacular, they're very decent, and we can afford to do a lot more. But what the government's choosing to do and pushing really hard is reducing debt. And it's really interesting priority to have to reduce debt when interest rates are record low. So the costs of having debt are record low, and yet we're trying to pay it off instead of investing in things that will give us higher payoffs in the future. It makes no sense economically. We should be taking the lowest interest rates that exist now and investing in infrastructure, investing in education, from childcare all the way up to post-secondary, investing in transit, investing in green energy, and we're not doing that. Instead, we're paying down debt.